This is Crypto PTSD, a place for those who have seen the unknown and now must face a new reality. For we know monsters are real and they live just outside your door. So join us every Monday night to hear the encounters from the survivors themselves.
It could do worse than kill you. I mean, it just seemed like it could suck your soul out.
Well, initially I said, don't even look back, John, don't even look back.
I could feel the blood rush from my face, thinking these were my last moments. What am I going to do?
Hello everybody, this is your host Dustin, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Crypto PTSD. I want to remind everyone that if you haven't joined the Crypto PTSD family yet, hit that subscribe button. I'll send you a notification every Monday when we upload our new shows. If you're listening and you've had an encounter and you'd like to be a guest on the show, send me an email. My email address is cryptoptsd@gmail.com. And don't forget to put encounter in the subject line. If you're listening to us on iTunes, please take the extra minute to rate and review. It really helps out the show. Let's go ahead and talk about the show tonight. I'd like to welcome Matt onto the show. Matt, thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're from, and you can be as specific or as vague as you want to be.
Originally from Florida, born and raised on the West Coast, Pinellas County area.
What did you know about the subject of Bigfoot before you had your first experience with it?
As a child, I actually saw the Patterson-Gimlin film in a theater as a trailer prior to a movie. And then a few years after that, there was a supposed Iceman Bigfoot exhibition in Tampa at the Curtis Hickson Hall, and ended up being a hoax, but that was pretty much about it. I just was under the impression they're all basic up north in Oregon, places like that, heavily wooded areas. Not much in Florida.
Growing up, did you ever hear stories about Bigfoot, or did you know anyone that claimed that they had seen one?
No, I was aware of the Boggy Creek movie, but that was nothing that I didn't really know that much about it. I knew it was some type of a swamp thing, like a monster, but I kind of thought it was like a creature of the Black Lagoon type of thing. So no, nobody ever talked about it.
What about your family members? What was the general consensus of the family? Did you guys think people that saw it were crazy, or were you kind of more open-minded to it?
And when I was growing up in my family, it was not even a subject. It was more a joke, if anything, but it was never a subject of discussion.
Yeah, that's fairly common there. Well, Matt, here in a minute, I'm going to hand it off to you. I want you to start from the beginning and take us through every encounter. Try to explain the landscape as best as possible to help paint a picture for the listeners' minds. We're going to get all the way through each one, and then, because I know you have multiple encounters, so I may stop you in between and ask you questions, and then we'll move on. But Matt, go ahead and take it away, man.
Well, the first encounter I had, I think it was encounter. I really don't know exactly what we saw, but I know what we did not see. My wife and I moved to Southwest Florida, 2001. And in the area we live, there's houses in the area, but then as you go down the streets, there's just like pine trees and shrubbery and basically scrub oak, Florida scrub oak, palmettos, all that sort of heavy brush. All paved roads, however. So it was nice for us to go out rollerblading, those sort of things, bicycling. That's something I used to do quite a bit on my off days, just go out cycling or rollerblading down the road. And sorry if my voice is getting a little shaky. It's just weird again. So going down, I found this one little stretch of road, about four or five houses down on each side, and then it kind of let out just shrubbery and maybe a lake on one side, but just thick pine forest, nothing you would ever, maybe just basically woods type of thing. You see rabbits and, times the foxes, that sort of thing. So nothing crazy, just a basic, little animal type of area. So one Sunday morning, this is actually 2001, it was in January, third Sunday, January. A cold front had just pushed through, and we had temperatures in the upper 60s. So my wife and I were rollerblading down this one stretch of road. As we passed in these houses, I noticed something down in the swale. It's like just like a creek basically, but or not a creek, but a ditch. But it's a swale down here. Sometimes there's vegetation and whatnot in it. So we're skating along. I look down it was on the right side of the road, and we're heading west. So that would have been on the north side. And I see this kind of a orangish, reddish brown, looked like I thought it was a big old dog at first because we were a good distance away in the swale down there. And I was like, damn, I hope he doesn't go next to the road. You know, someone's going to hit that dog. And I see somebody's dog get hit. So we're skating along and getting closer and closer. And we stop and we look at it, and it's still down there like it's rummaging through. And I think I'm looking at, you know, the profile of the dog where the front legs are to the right of it, right of me, I should say, so to the north side, and the back legs are to the south side. So we're looking at the profile of the dog, and he's like in the whole swale. I mean, he's basically the whole dog is in the swale. He's as big as the swale is. And these things are 4 or 5 feet across. So we start skating closer, and all of a sudden a face pops up, and it doesn't come out from what I think would be the front side. It is actually, we're not looking at the profile, we're looking at a head on of something that's huge in this swale. And it's a black face. I guess we caught it by surprise because it was just like down, looking like it was rummaging in the swale for food or weeds or something. And when the face popped up, it took like a second or two for it to focus on what he saw, my wife and I. And all of a sudden, I couldn't really see much features on the face, but you could see the eyes, if that makes any sense. They're like a bit of a gloss that you could just see and feel the eyes. And it started barreling down the swale, and we're still standing there going, wow, you know, basically, what the heck is this thing? As it comes towards us in the swale, we're roughly probably 250 feet, maybe 200 feet from the animal coming towards us. And it gets about 15 yards down the swale, and it starts to drift up the swale onto the street, onto the pavement. When I say drift, it like floated. It was like really bizarre, just like it was just effortlessly just kind of glided up. And its shoulders never broke a plane of back and forth or up and down. The plane of the shoulders are always horizontal. So as it gets up to the roadway, it gets up there and takes a couple of steps and stops. And at this point, I'm looking at that thing. My wife and I are there. We're like at either end. We're both stopped looking at this thing. And I couldn't make a detail in the face, but you could just see the eyes like focusing in on us, and just almost like the anger and like the hatred or the, like, you're my next dinner type of thing. That we were the main focus of that animal at that time. So I basically looked at my wife and said, baby, we got to go now. So she turned around, I turned around, started skating like people who've never skated before. So she was next to me, so I got behind her, started pushing her. So every fourth stride, I looked back and I looked at this animal, and it was getting so close to us so fast. I couldn't make through my mind. It's like, what the hell is this kind of animal? First, I thought it was a big cat because I saw all the hair moving. It was about 6 to 8 inches of hair moving, but it's all the way down the arms, all the way, I guess, the arms or the legs, whatever, around the face, but it didn't move like a cat or a big animal like that, like a 4-legged creature would normally move. It didn't have a gait of a bear. It didn't have a gait of a dog. It didn't have a gait of anything I've ever seen before. The shoulders never broke a horizontal plane. And this thing was huge. It reminded me of my 67 Beetle. It took like a third of the roadway. And this happened at 1:45 in the afternoon on a Sunday. Are you kidding me? I didn't know what it was. So as I'm looking back, this thing is continually gaining speed on us very, very quickly. And the focus, as I look back, I just catch its eyes, and it's just, again, like looking through us. I mean, you could feel it. It was really weird. So we get up probably, say, 200, 300 feet further away. So I'm contemplating what I need to do now. Do I need to get my skates off and try to beat this thing down? Because if he gets to me, he's gonna beat me up because he's huge, and I don't have any defense. What do I have? My skates. So I think about what I have to do to get out of my skates, get my wife behind a fence or something, because I'm thinking it's some type of a 4-legged animal that's a dog or something. But it was bigger than anything I've ever seen, moved like nothing I've ever seen, faster than anything I've ever seen. So it's like, as we're getting toward the end of the street, as the houses started up for us again, as I'm looking back, all of a sudden it kind of rears back on its 4 legs still, and then drifts back into the woods, into this big old opening that we had passed earlier. And it kind of drifted into the woods and just kind of faded away into the woods. It just drifted in. That was it. We didn't know what the hell it was. I was still thinking it's a big cat, exotic animal, got out somewhere. Don't know. We ended up finishing that skate and came home and looked on the internet, looked on the news, looked in the paper. Couldn't find anything that even matched it. So kind of just forgot about it. At that point, I just kind of, must have been something weird thing. So I just kind of dismissed it, I guess, after a few months. Just had no idea. I still don't really know exactly what we saw, but didn't fit anything that I'd ever seen before. And that was the first situation we had.
Okay, I've got a few questions here, but that was, wow. Okay, so you and your wife were skating, I'm guessing on a road or a bike path?
On a roadway, it had houses on as the first part of coming out of a housing development, then it goes into just shrubbery and stuff on either side of the road, and it goes into other roadways, but it's not developed residential, basically.
Okay, and then when you saw the creature, what brought you to that area? Like, did you stop and you were looking, or seeing it, is that what made you stop?
Seeing it. I had been down that road several times prior to us being down there. It was a cycling area for me, just to be out on a nice paved road with nothing there but just trees and shrubs, not very many cars. So it's great for cycling or for rollerblading. But why we stopped was because of that animal.
Okay, from the first time you saw it to the last time you saw it, if you had to guess, how long do you think the whole encounter lasted?
Maybe 90 seconds. I mean, I would think at first you think, oh my God, it lasted 5 minutes. But in reality, if you really piece it together, it's probably about 90 seconds.
Okay, so whenever you said something interesting that I think most people can at least relate to, especially hunters, because when you're walking through the woods and let's say you're looking in a bush or a thorn thicket and you see a patch of fur, you stop and you immediately start trying to gather things because you're trying to picture what kind of animal is it and what piece of the body, what body part am I looking at? So I think it's very interesting and lends credibility to your story because you originally thought that this was a dog and you were looking at it long ways. And until the end, you didn't realize that you were head on with this thing. So as you're sitting there and you're looking at it and you're thinking, is this a dog? Was it digging through the trash with its arms? Was there any movement that you saw while you were standing there trying to, your eyes and your brain was trying to piece together what you were looking at?
The only movement we saw, it must have been something where it was moving its lower wrist or its paws or whatever it was. I don't know, maybe slight digging, but its head was down when we first came upon it. And I don't think it smelled us. As I said, a cold front came through, so the wind's around the north, so it wouldn't have smelled us until we actually where we were or closer. But that was it. From the distance, it kind of just looked like it was like a slight dig for something. But the way it was moving when I first saw the dog, it was just like, it was really weird looking. Everything was just weird looking, but it was big. I knew that. Kind of like a reddish, brownish dog.
Okay. So as you're looking at it, it finally looks up at you. Did it have long hair on its head that was hanging over its face and it looked up and it parted and you could see the face? Or was it short hair and you just didn't realize until it looked at you?
Honestly, when it first looked up like that, I thought maybe it's an orangutan or something. When they had it looked like to me like an orangutan face, or the distance, have a dark face, round from the distance, because I couldn't make out how big that would. I mean, I was thinking that would be a big dog, and that's just too big for a dog. So I'm thinking, okay, is it orangutan? Because looking at the face, I didn't know, it was just such a fast motion when it came up. I mean, it was like pop, and the face was there, and I'm thinking, oh, that's no dog. What is that, orangutan or something? But the hair was away from the face, so to speak, and I didn't notice that length in the hair around the face until I actually started coming towards us.
Okay, and how long do you think that was? And then how long do you think the hair on the body was?
Facial, and that around that face was probably in a 3 to 4 inch range, perhaps. But as it got away from the face, it got thicker, and I would say estimate 6, maybe 8. And in some instances, like as it get in the shoulder area, in the front legs, like under I guess it was the chest area, it looked a little longer in that area because it was flowing. As that thing or whatever, it scampered down the street or whatever it did. It's kind of weird. I just remembered flashbacks from when Fred Flintstone used to get on his twinkie toes and go across the floor. It just reminded me of how he would just move, and that thing would just move just like that, but way faster. Its incredible speed it was amazing how quickly it moved.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so the eyes. I'm really going to break this down because this is really interesting. It looks up. What would you say the shape of the eyes were, and how far apart were they?
They were a roundish color, or not roundish color, a roundish shape. Not like didn't remind me of like a dog. I could make out like where the nose. I knew where the nose was, but I couldn't make it out in definition. Probably it looked like it would have been in in proportion to the size of a head of an animal or something of a human of that size, where in proportion to the width, I would say maybe 3 or 4 inches, perhaps, because it was really large.
Okay. Would you say on the shape that they would resemble like a hen's egg, except instead of one end being smaller, it was kind of evened out?
Yes, that's a good analogy.
Okay. All right. So this thing is digging, doing whatever it's doing. Did you guys stop and stare at it, or were you kind of slowly still skating towards it as you're trying to figure out what it was?
We stopped originally, and it didn't realize that we were in range of it, I guess. I said, "Wow, look at that!" Conversation quick back and forth with my wife and I, and then we got closer to it because I was like, I don't want that. I thought it was a dog. I said, I don't want that dog to run into the road, So hopefully we can get close and find out who it belongs to. And wow, man, sorry.
You're fine, man. Take
Just
as much
it's
time
weird.
as you need.
It's just weird.
Yeah, man, this is crazy. I was not expecting this, to be honest. This is insane, and I'm picturing it in my head. Go ahead.
I would say you and me both, brother. It was bizarre. Bizarre.
And I've talked to you several times, and I mean, I haven't heard you talk like this so far. So, I mean, you've always been very well spoken, and it seems like you're struggling to talk. And I mean, that's a good thing. It's making me believe that what you're telling you really saw, because this is terrifying. So, how far off of the road do you think it was? So what'd you call it, a swale?
A swale.
Swale.
It's basically a creek. Yeah, it's basically a creek. However, a creek usually has not a creek, a ditch. I get those confused. A ditch is normally what people would refer to it as, but the difference being with swales tend to sometimes grow vegetation, when they're not being utilized for water runoff.
Okay, and how far off of the road was this?
It comes off the shoulder of the road, probably maybe 3 foot, and then it starts to slope down, and it went down into about at the middle of the swale. I would say it's probably 4.5, 5 foot. It's in a U shape, basically.
Okay, so you're going towards it thinking it's a dog. It ends up hearing you. Now, did you make a noise, or was it the skating that you think it heard? I mean, what got its attention to your presence?
I think it was because we had a cold front, and so the winds were shifting, and they were behind us. As the winds are coming northeast at that point behind us, blowing southwest. And if he was, or it was at a point where it would take us, from a westerly point of view, he was on the west side, we were on the east side. I'm sure he caught a whiff of us at one point.
Okay, and
we weren't that close. We weren't that close before it finally looked up. So that's what I'm thinking. We had, it was fairly had a decent breeze behind us that day.
So you said 200 feet, so that's like 66 yards. Like that's close, but that's not that far away, especially to be unarmed and on skates, So it sees you, and it turns and goes up the slope. Does it stop when it gets up there, or does it immediately come into, at what point were you like, okay, this is enough, we need to leave?
After the head popped up, and as I said, it looked like it took a couple seconds for whatever it was to register what we were. It started in a swale coming towards us, and it was moving, and it drifted, or it looks like it floated up on top to the roadway. It took maybe 2 or 3 more steps and stopped right in the middle of the roadway, and on all fours it stopped there. And at that point, it just started. It didn't even have where you'd see a regular animal just start to lunge and go forward. It just all of a sudden shifted into high speed mode. It was really weird. It just boom, and all of a sudden it's coming at us at a high rate of speed. I'm like, we got to go now. So after it stopped, we looked at it, it looked at us, and then it started coming towards us. That's when we took off.
Now, did you see the arms like going forward and backwards and the legs pumping as it's coming at you? What was the locomotion of it?
That was probably the most bizarre thing that I couldn't make sense of. I mean, I'm just an average kind of person. I mean, I'm in middle management. I'm not an outdoorsman, so to speak, but I born and raised. We just kind of played outdoors. I understand locomotion, that sort of thing, the whole process. But this thing, its legs were moving, but sometimes it looked like once or twice it looked like they were going sideways. It could have been the hair. I don't really know, but they were moving not like anything I've ever seen before. They were like moving in a conjunction or a process that would look like it was already planned out for the animal. It was just a bizarre looking movement. And then again, the shoulders never broke a horizontal plane.
Okay, but the arms and legs were moving. It wasn't like tippy-toeing towards you on fingers and toes where the arms and legs are stationary and the rest are moving. You saw movement in there.
Correct.
Okay. But earlier when you made that reference, it was to it floating, as in like how it moved, right? That's what you meant by that Flintstone reference earlier?
Yeah, how it kind of gets up, he's on all fours and he just kind of moves around.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like he's kind of like floating around. That's the idea that it reminded me of, because this thing was so big.
Okay.
But he definitely was not, I don't know if he was on his toes, but it looked like he was floating for the majority of the time he was chasing us or in pursuit or whatever.
Okay, did you hear it running on the pavement? Did you hear slaps or nails clacking on the concrete?
Nothing. Perhaps because we were in a panic going out away from it, skating into a wind or a breeze. I'm not sure if any noise would have carried towards us or not.
Yeah, and skating's pretty loud anyways. Did you hear it breathing, or did you hear it make any noises at all?
No, not one.
Okay, what about when it was moving through that creek coming to you? Could you hear it coming through the brush?
No, it was really silent.
Okay, now from where you were at until you looked back and it turned away, how far of a distance is that? So how far did it chase you?
It chased us probably around 60 yards. As I look back, it was probably within 25 yards as it seemed like it let up at that point and just drifted away into the woods.
Do you think there was a car that came on the road and that's what made it turn off, or do you think it just decided to turn off?
There's no cars on that road at all that day, which is kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe we were near it where it's lair. I don't know. Because as I said, there's a big opening in the woods, and that's the opening that this thing went into. But other than that, I don't know. Then there's nothing other than us on that roadway at the time.
Okay, so you're skating away. Every couple skates, you're looking back, and it's still coming, and it's gaining ground on you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you said it stops or it rears up. What do you mean by that?
It almost like it as a runner would rear up after, say, a sprint, say a 100-yard sprint or a 50-yard sprint. As they cross that line, their chest kind of comes up a little bit. That's kind of like how it raised its chest up a little bit, and then still on all fours, it went like shifted down or drifted down into the woods. So the shoulders and the head, they came up a little bit as it slowed down, and they just went to the left back into the woods.
Wow. Okay. When it comes to these things, that thing could have killed you. I mean, I think you're in agreement that thing was faster than you guys.
In agreement, absolutely faster and larger.
So it could have killed you. I'm thinking that, I personally believe that these things are extremely passive, and only rarely do you actually get a bad one or a mean one or in a bad situation with one. However, I think this thing, because it could have caught you, you were at a disadvantage, you were on skates, so you had to stay on the pavement, whether it knew that or not, I don't know. But it's almost like it just kind of ran you off until it got to a spot where it could dive back into the woods over there. What do you think about the encounter? Do you think that's what happened if you had to speculate on it?
Yeah, I really would. Just from that area. It's only 2 miles or 3 miles from a river outlet, so it's not too crazy to think that they would be either a nest there or whatever they live in or whatever it was that lives there, just to kind of keep me away, because it wasn't a well traveled road. I would agree with you, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy, man. Especially in a rural area that's kind of being developed. I mean, that completely makes sense. I'm just curious as to what it was digging into. What was it doing over there, you know?
Quite possibly because of foraging. Like I said, there's different plants or things that may grow in there as the season is in the winter in Florida. So it's quite possible to dig it for something edible. I don't know. I was saying it was there for a while in one spot.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. It looked like it was either digging. It could have. Maybe he had something killed, but like I said, when I first came upon it, I didn't even think that why or what it would be, because I thought it was a dog, and I thought I'd look at the profile. I thought his head was on the side of the creek or the side of the swale rather than looking right at me.
How wide do you think it was across from shoulder to shoulder?
Probably 4 foot. I would guesstimate about 4 foot. It was big. It was big. It reminded me again of I had a 67 bug, and it just it reminded me of the width of my bug going down the street. It took up like a third of the roadway. I couldn't get over how large this thing was, and how like almost graceful it moved coming towards us. The whole thing was just nothing registered in the brain.
Yeah.
What it could be. Nothing.
How much do you think it weighed, if you had to guess? And after this, we'll move on to your next encounter.
Not great with that subject. However, looking at anything that would compare to it, I'd say probably 400 to 500, 450, maybe 400 pounds. It was very large. However, I never did see the back end of it. I just saw the front. That was enough.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead and take us into your next encounter.
This one is really bizarre as well. Same place where I live in the neighborhood. This one happened to me by myself. It was January, February, like 2 years after that event. Same type of area where it didn't have many. This one road that I used to run down had a path I ran in a 5.5, 6 mile path roads just throughout the neighborhood. I'd run around, get a good run through. Same type of thing. It was a nice paved road, but no houses on it, and just pine shrubs on either side with oak trees and pine trees, all Florida scrubs, that sort of thing, not developed whatsoever. So I run this route probably, I don't know, 200-300 times. So as I come around this one corner, I get this smell of like just something really disgusting, like something dead foul that's been sitting in a garbage can in the heat. It got my attention, and I came around this corner running, and it was a short block of running before I would take another right and go down a long stretch of roadway. So this stretch of roadway is probably 200 feet from corner to corner. As I come up on this corner, I catch a whiff of that stuff, or whatever it is, the smell, and I take a right and I go down this short stretch of roadway. And I come into the middle of the roadway, and there must have been about a 16 to 18 inch. It looked like just dark red, almost like a maroon colored ink on the pavement in the dead center of the roadway. I stopped. I'm like, what the hell is that? And there's nothing else next to it. There's no other drips. There's nothing. So I didn't touch it, but I'm thinking, is that blood? It's really, really weird. It didn't look like paint. It looked like a bodily fluid of some sort. But I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But it's not something I've seen a lot of, or any of it. I've never seen something like that in the middle of the roadway on this route, which I run several hundred times. So it's about 16 to 18 inches. Still has a gloss to it, a shine. So it kind of looks a little bit fresh. And I'm standing there. The smell is still just quite abundant. And it's like, oh my God, what the hell smells? So I'm standing in the middle of this road, and I look back to my right, and underneath this tree, probably 10 to 12 feet off the roadway, seemed like a small oak tree, and it had some of the branches or the area underneath it cleared out, almost like a little cove of tree on top, and the area underneath the bottom, like a little, I don't know, just something you can clear out and sit underneath type of thing. I see a dead animal. So naturally I'm thinking, well, this has got to be what's causing the smell and everything. It was really weird looking. I mean, I've never really seen too many dead Florida deers up close like that. This was probably 20 feet from me. It looked more like a Irish wolfhound, the size and the facial features. However, I couldn't make out that much because there's a lot of stuff missing. The innards are all missing. The looked like it got ripped open from the stomach, and the skin was pulled back. And there's nothing inside. You can still see like a rib cage, but there's no stomach organs or nothing like that. The eyeballs are gone. So I'm looking at this thing going, man, maybe he got hit by a car coming across the road because it's big enough, and it makes sense that maybe this thing got hit by a car and it went over there and died. And okay, well, let me get out of here because it smells crazy. But it didn't really smell like a dead dog, but it just, because everything was there, I'm thinking, my God, this is what's got to be that smell. So I go up about another 100 feet, turn the corner. I start going down this road. Again, I've been on this road several hundred times. And this road is probably just under a quarter mile long. And it's just trees and forest on either side. So I start down the road, and I'm running at a pretty good pace. And I don't wear earphones or nothing like that. I want to make sure I know if there's any cars or anything coming around me that I need to watch out for. So I'm going down the road, and I start hearing like a whisper or like a gibberish. And it's kind of like a... I'm like thinking to myself, what is that I'm hearing? So I'm going about 50 yards, and I'm hearing this in my head. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I stop, and I don't hear anything. And this is a bright, sunny day. I mean, it's a nice Florida day in the winter. I look around. I look on either side of the roadway, and I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. I stop for about a minute. I turn around. I'm completely silent. I don't hear a thing. Okay, maybe it must be me. So I start again. I start running again, and I start hearing, then it gets a little bit more guttural, like, but it's all out of whisper. And I'm thinking, all right, there must be some drunk bums or something in the woods messing with me. So I got, about another 50 yards. I'm hearing all that crap, and I stop, and I'm like, all right, guys, come on, let's go. I hear you. Come on, show yourselves. Let's go. Let's get this over with. So I thought for sure that, some drunk guys were in there, some bums or something, that they're messing with me. I had to fight my way out if I needed to. But I was feeling pretty pumped up at that point. I was like, okay, all right, guys, come on, let's get this over with. Quit messing with me. I don't hear any. And so I'm thinking to myself, is it me? I mean, what's going on with me? I can't understand why I just had this episode where I'm hearing these voices and I don't hear anybody, and there's nobody out here but me. There's no cars, there's nothing. It's like, there's nothing. It's just me. So I start again. And now it gets more guttural, but it's still in a low whisper back and forth, like just 2 or 3 different like sounds coming out, like a gibberish. And then I go another 30 or 40 yards, and I'm hearing it on both sides of the street, so to speak, but I don't hear anything but that. I can't hear anybody like in the woods or anything next to me. And the whole time I'm hearing this, the whole stretch of this piece of roadway, it's like following me and flanking me the whole time. It's not like behind me. It's like right on either side of my hearing pattern, so to speak, on my left and my right. So I'm thinking to myself, what? I must be going crazy. So I finally get to my last point of stopping on this road, and I was pissed at this point. And I was cussing up a storm. Come on, guys, let's go. Let's show yourself. Let's get this over with. I know you're in there messing with me, and I was getting all full of myself, and nothing, not a sound, nothing, not a thing. And so I ran another 20 yards, and I turned off that road. That was it. Never heard anything else from that the rest of my run home. But that just still haunts me today. Is the sound that it's kind of like the gibberish or the stuff they have in up north, the samurai chatter, but it didn't have the same samurai chatter type of tone. It was more like a gibberish, real guttural, like kind of deep. It was just weird. I thought maybe it must have been in my head because I couldn't hear it outside. I could only hear it sound like it was inside my head, but it wasn't like outside on either side of my hearing. It was just really weird. But that was my second encounter.
Okay, so that seeing the puddle of blood and then running, hearing that's all the same encounter, right? That all happened on the same run?
Correct.
Okay, so whenever you stopped, how far away was the blood puddle with you? Like, are you standing right over it?
When I first stopped, when I first came around the corner, I turned right on this road, and I had that smell that it had like a wall of scent. It was like halfway between the corner where I turned and the next corner where I turned to go down the road where I heard the voices. The puddle was in the dead center of the road, and I came upon that, and that's when I stopped.
So you're standing right next to the puddle then, right?
I'm looking right at it. It's 2-3 inches from my foot.
Okay. Did it look oily? Was there like or was it just a regular fluid and it was just shiny because it was fluid?
No, it didn't. It didn't look like anything like a transmission. It didn't have that pinkish color. It didn't have a dark oil color. It had a shine, but not an oily shine. And it was extremely dark. I got that dark red type of thing, or mahogany. That's really, or whatever a deep red would be. It's a really deep reddish color. It looked like it started to get a little bit blacker. I guess because it's starting to dry. I'm assuming it's blood. I don't know for sure. It didn't make a lot of sense that it wouldn't be anything transmission-wise.
And what's the speed limit on that road for cars?
On that short road, I don't know if there's one posted. It's probably 35, if that, in the neighborhood. But you're looking, this is probably 2 lots long, this short little road that I was on before I turned to hear the voices.
Okay, and the blood spot, was it dead center in the middle of the road, or was it favoring one side or the other?
Dead center.
Okay. On this road, is it two-way traffic? Like, are there lines, or is it one of those roads that doesn't have a center line, so people kind of favor the center until they see another car, and then they kind of pull over?
Yeah, there's no lines on it. Again, it's a little residential. There's one house on it, and it's probably 200 feet long from corner to corner where I ran on it.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is because if it has a center line and something's hit right in the center, I mean, it's not out of question, but it's a little unusual, unless someone hits it, right on the edge. But if it doesn't have a center line, then that makes sense. Did you see drag marks from the blood puddle to the dead animal?
No, I didn't see anything. That's why I thought perhaps it was the animal first, maybe got hit so hard, but I didn't see any other drops of blood. It was just one big puddle right in the middle of the street, and that was it.
Okay, and how far off the road was the dead animal?
Probably 12 feet.
Okay, and the reason...
And tucked into some shrubs type of thing.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is because sometimes in a residential neighborhood, people want to keep their streets looking nice. So sometimes people will stop and drag animals to the side, but normally they don't drag them up in the woods. Normally they just kind of drag them, right there on the side and leave them. How far was this puddle of blood from where you saw the creature on the first encounter?
Probably 6 blocks. And our blocks in Florida are probably 3 or 4 house lots long, maybe 400 feet between each block. So I would say maybe not even a quarter mile, an eighth of a mile from that first encounter.
So it's definitely plausible that it could have been, if something killed that, it could have been the same thing you saw. I mean, it's plausible, right?
I guess it could have been. And, honestly, I thought when I saw the animal that, must have been hit by a car. But why would it be kind of tucked underneath like these branches that kind of overcame it? So it's kind of hidden behind. You couldn't really see it from the roadway unless you actually turned and stopped and looked around the trees that were there. So that's what kind of made me think, well, why would that, if it got hit, it flew that far? It's kind of convenient, I guess, but it didn't make a lot of sense. I just kind of brushed it off and carried on.
Well, yeah, that's why I asked the speed limit on that road, because I'm trying to think, okay, if something got hit, would it fly off like that? And if it's 70 miles an hour, it's very likely something got hit. Being 35, it's a little bit more unlikely, but absolutely could have happened. But my question is 12 feet off the road in some brush with kind of, like you said, brush being over it. That's unusual. And it's unusual that if it's the animal and it didn't die instantly, that there's not a drag mark. Because if it's people or if it's animals, they're going to drag it. If you stop to move a dead animal, you're not going to pick it up and carry it. You're going to drag it. And animals, I mean, think of a mountain lion or a bear or a dog, a coyote. they're going to bite it and eat it, and if they're going to move it, they're going to drag it. They're not going to carry it. So it's kind of unusual that there's this puddle of blood on the concrete and there's no drag marks, and especially if the animal gets hit and it loses its guts. I've seen that. It's a mess, and it's all over the road, and it gets drug. But the fact that you can see in the chest cavity and in the stomach, there's no organs, that's very unusual. Did it look like the animal was freshly killed, or did it look like it had been there for days?
It didn't look like a real fresh kill. It didn't look, like I said, didn't look that old. However, the smell was just unbearable. That's why I assumed that was a smell, which it was. It was a rough one. So I didn't really linger long around there to observe it too long. I would say maybe guesstimate 2 days max.
But the blood, was it still liquid?
I wouldn't say it would. I don't know for sure. Like I said, it had a sheen to it, and it was darker. So I'm assuming that it was. After I saw the animal, that's what I assumed it was. Cause when I first came upon it, I didn't know what is this big old. I thought somebody must have busted an oil pan or something. But there's no other trickles or trace or anything. I was like, well, that's really weird. Why is this in the middle of the road? And there's nothing around it. And I looked to the left and the right, looked in the trees to the left of the roadway, and then as I turned to the right, I looked all the way around to my right shoulder. That's when I saw the animal tucked underneath the trees. And I said, well, it must have been that. Why is he way up there? Well, whatever. Carry on.
Okay, so if you're standing on top of the blood puddle or the puddle and you're looking straight perpendicular from the road, was it off like that, or was it kind of at an angle? You know what I mean?
As far as the animal or the in relation to the puddle?
Yes, yeah.
It was roughly the animal was probably 12 feet off the roadway in a direct line from the center of the road. From the puddle, it was probably another 10 to 15, about 10 foot. So probably in diagonal, it was a lot further. I'd say probably in the 20-foot range from the actual spot to the animal was under the brush to the actual spot of the puddle in the middle of the roadway.
That's so unusual, because if a car hits it, it's gonna be at an angle. So I get that, but a car would have had to been flying to throw it that far, you know what I mean?
And he couldn't have, simply because the roadway, I mean, it stops into a T where I come off the one road where I turn, and that there's a house at the end of that, so you can't go through that intersection. You go through the house if you did, and it's only maybe 100 feet from the puddle to the intersection, so you couldn't be going that fast.
That's interesting. So, okay, you see that, and you see the dead animal. So, in your mind, you've answered the question. It's time to keep running. How long after from when you were left that blood puddle did you start hearing the gibberish?
I ran about another 100 feet to the corner, and I turned to my right, heading westbound through this area. That was probably right as I turned onto that roadway. I started slowly hearing that gibberish, that talking, or like whatever it was. So it was almost immediately as I turned right onto that road. And it seemed like at first it was coming more from the right hand side. That would have been where the animal in that little stretch of woods was. But then it started to slowly drift to the left hand side, and then kind of like back and forth in stereo in my head. Again, I couldn't hear it audibly out loud, which I thought I would be able to. It was just like in my head, which I still can't figure that out.
That's interesting, man. So you get down there, you turn, and you instantly start hearing it. It kind of started on the right, but very quickly it was coming from kind of both sides, right?
Correct.
See, if it was just in your head, I don't think you would have a directional sense from it, So I think you're hearing it, but I get what you're saying. It's like you almost feel it more than you hear it, except you're hearing it, if that makes any sense. Like you're hearing it in your head, but you're running and your feet are impacting the ground and you're breathing. And I don't know if you, but like when I run, I pace my breath to my steps, which most people probably don't do that. It's just something I do. So you've got things going on. Now, every time you stopped, it was only because you're like, okay, I know I'm hearing this, and you were stopping to confront what you thought were drunk people, right?
Correct.
Did you ever hear a twig snap or anything that would indicate something moving along with you outside of the gibberish?
No.
Okay, so how far is the woods from the roadway there? Like, how far off the roadway until the woods start or until you can't see?
Probably 10 to 12 feet on both sides.
Did you ever walk towards the wood line whenever you stopped and were trying to confront what you thought were drunk people?
No. I just wanted to stay where I had open space. If there were more, because it sounded like there was more than one, so I wanted to have as much room in order to either A, attack or B, retreat as quickly as possible when confronted with whatever it was.
Yeah, that makes sense. So,
again, I didn't have anything on me but my shoes, and that was it. I mean, I didn't have nothing. I don't carry anything with me. No pepper spray, nothing I should. There's big animals that live in this area, but I didn't.
Were you hearing any other animal noises at all, birds or anything like that? Or when you stopped, was it weirdly silent?
It was completely silent each time I stopped.
And how many times did you stop again?
Stopped 3 times. And
this was all on the same road?
Correct. Same road, which is probably, again, less than an eighth of a mile from where we had the original sighting, and generally the same area.
Okay, what is your take on it? What do you think happened?
With this second episode, for the longest time I didn't know what to think. Again, after being somewhat listening to different accounts of things, perhaps maybe I came upon 1 or 2 of them feasting on something, and then as I came up upon the puddle in the roadway, that may have been their area to leave without being detected. I didn't hear anything at all. It was really, really silent. I don't know what the gibberish is, if that's something at all, but I have heard different recordings of things that sound very, very, very similar to that from a Sasquatch website of sorts. So possibly it must have been. I realize still really don't know for sure, but it took me probably a good year and a half to run down that road, even bicycle down that road, because it was just petrified me, because I was so scared that I thought I was going to lose my life that day, because I didn't know what to think. I'm in the middle of this road. There's nothing on either end of me, broad daylight, but I was just really frightened for my life that this might be it. You got to fight like hell to get out of whatever situation you're in.
Absolutely.
It was definitely weird.
Absolutely. This day, was this a common thing? Like, was this a habitual thing? Did you normally run on this day at this time regularly? Or was this like, I think I'm going to go for a run, and it's kind of spontaneous?
No, I normally run at the heat of the day, whether it be winter, summer, fall, whatever, just for exercise purposes. But normally I run after 12 in that general vicinity. And at this particular time, I was running 3 to 5 times a week, depending upon my schedule. It would be different days, depending upon if I was off or not, but it'd always be almost the same time. I never really ran at night much.
Now, what about the path? Was this your usual path that you did every day, or?
Yeah, it was a habitual running. I could either go 3 miles, 4 miles, or 5 miles if I wanted to, depending upon which road I took. But the original, where I heard all the voices or what the gibberish was, that was always part of it. First part of my leg was always ending at that corner, the very end of that corner of the street. From that neighborhood, I can go, like I said, to a 3, 4, or 5, or even a 6 mile course if I wanted.
It makes me wonder when they speak. Elephants, they make noises to where it's lower than what human ears can hear. So it almost makes me wonder, because I've heard these things speak, and it's absolutely terrifying. I mean, there's no other word for it. And it's nothing that you've ever heard. But I almost wonder if they're trying to be covert, if they can't speak in a lower decibel level that our ears can't pick up. And what sounds like gibberish is whenever they peak above that to where we can hear it, because you're saying it's a low guttural. Do you get what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense.
And I wonder if that's what it was. You see, if you told me that you were hearing what sounded like 2 different individuals speaking on the same side of the road as it was moving with you, that's a lot harder for me to believe. The reason is if I'm running next to someone and I'm following you, we're just going to point or whatever. However, if you're on the other side of the road and I need to communicate with you and I can't do it in the open in fear of you seeing me, I'm going to speak loud enough so I think they can hear me, but hopefully you can't while you're running,
Yes.
So that makes
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it makes me believe your story more because it's on two sides of the road. So that would justify having, if something was following you, having to speak instead of, hand signals or whatever. And the fact that they're only speaking when you're running, and they obviously are only moving when you're running to cover their own sound. And obviously it worked because you thought you were crazy, right?
Yeah, for many years. I dismissed it because I was like, it must have been me. I don't know, must have been stressed, overworked, I don't know, but I know what I heard. And it's funny because there's a Russian guy, a Russian scientist or Bigfoot enthusiast that was on TV and made a reference of, I guess, some of the Russian Bigfoot or Sasquatch he's heard, and it sounded almost identical to what I heard, a little more guttural. My experience was that almost identical as far as some of the syllables and parts of his dialect.
Well, Matt, is there any other stories you'd like to share tonight?
Actually, we got one more. It happened to my wife and I.
Okay.
This happened August 10th, 2015, at Rodman Reservoir Campground in Ocala, or actually, I think it's Palaca, Florida. It might be on the edge of Ocala National Forest. We actually rented a RV for my wife's birthday. I was never a big camper when I was growing up. Most of my camping was at the Holiday Inn. So for me to go out in an RV and that sort of thing was kind of special.
Yeah, holiday and camping, man. That's it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, secure. So as a gift to her, I decided we'll rent an RV, take our dogs, and we'll go find a campground. We're going to make 2 or 3 campground stops, and with the rains in the time we went in August for her birthday, we were pretty much limited to a couple of different stops we made. The first one was Rodman. She was looking at different sites, for possible Bigfoot activity. And I was thinking, well, the chances of us having any encounter are just slim to none. I mean, I'm thinking, it's the middle of summer. It's hotter than Hades outside. Ain't nothing going to be around, especially with all that kind of fur. If they're that furry and, that it ain't going to, yeah, right, whatever. I went along with it, not thinking that anything would happen. If it did, great, or whatever. I'm not even expecting it. I'm getting off the grid for, a couple days, just complete silence and peacefulness, and walk our dogs and have a good time. Go camping for the first time, really. So we pull into this, I pulled into the campground. We got there on a Saturday evening. I pulled into lot number 9, and you can pull it up on the internet and check it out. It's right in the northern part of the Ocala National Forest. And so we pull up, we get all situated, get the RV. And I'm thinking, I'm more worried about bear and stuff, that sort of thing. So when I got there, I had 2 male dogs, and we went out and we peed the perimeter. I peed, they peed. We all had mail scent in the perimeter of the campground where we were staying. I just wanted to make sure that they knew that whatever came into our camp, if something did, that there's males here. They would be able to smell it. So on Sunday, next day, we're up, we're cooking, we're doing all sorts, go through the day, walk our dogs, all kind of good stuff. Getting to be about 5:30, and I'm cooking barbecue chicken on the grill, and I've had a couple of beers, and it's about 85 degrees out, blazing sun, probably 90 degrees with all the heat and everything. Pretty nasty afternoon, but we're camping, so we're having a good time. So I go into the camper and get something, and I'm coming back out, and my wife and I are talking, and so we're just sitting there yapping back and forth, and all of a sudden thinking, man, it's really quiet. I said, hey, have you noticed really how quiet it is? It's like I don't hear any birds or nothing. I mean, we got here yesterday, there's plenty of birds and stuff around and flying, and just there's nothing out there. It's really, really silent, kind of eerie. Like, yeah, it's kind of weird. I said, what time is it? She said, 6:30. I said, okay, 6:30. And then shortly right after that, I heard one whistle like that from a treetop. It sounded like down between us and the reservoir. I would say maybe sounded like it was maybe 20 yards away, but it sounded like a bird up in the treetop. And I said, ha ha ha, look at a warning whistle. Oh, that's crazy. And went back to kind of doing my thing, and next thing we know, there's a tree, pine tree, probably 35 to 40 feet high, probably 30 feet, 35 feet from where we're standing, start shaking violently. I'm talking violently. It's not like I'm, pushing it back and forth. I'm talking, this thing was shaking, almost like vibrating. And what happened for like 6 seconds, it shook so hard, top of the tree fell off. It snapped off and came crashing down right next to it. And we're looking both amazing, going, oh my God, did you just see that? What in the world? As it came down, that was it. And it crashed and boom. And we're like, oh my God. So we didn't know what that was. I mean, I didn't think it was a bear because I didn't think that was something a bear could do. Not much of, muscular contraction, shake a tree like that. So we're sitting there in shock, and we're kind of just, laughing it off, and I'm kind of, okay, relieved. So I go to the left side of the campground out in the bush, like behind a couple of trees and stuff. I had to pee, so I start peeing. And all of a sudden, directly in front of me, I hear a it was like really low, but it went through my entire body, like started from my feet. I could feel it go through my feet into my legs and my chest. And I could feel that whole vibration. It was like, holy smokes, what the world was that? So I quickly stopped what I was doing, got back to the campsite and told my wife. And so I was gung-ho to go look for some whatever made these noises. She obviously said, no, I think you need to stay right next to the camp. We ended up I put a couple apples out just as maybe a peace offering because we didn't want to upset anything that was out in the woods. Nothing ever came back to them. I took videos of putting it out and went back the next day, and they were still there. So nothing really came to it. It was pretty funny. As we left the following day, went to the ranger at the very end after dumping all our black wastewater and stuff, and went to the ranger at the ranger office and said, hey, could you tell me, it's a woman probably in her late 40s, what could shake a tree? And she's like, look at me real well. I said, we had a tree shaking yesterday afternoon right outside our campsite. I said, it shook so hard that the top of the tree broke off. And she looked, and her eyes got as big as saucers. And that's the first time I've ever seen that expression ever come to light. Her eyes got huge. She said, a bear would? And I was like, okay. And that was it. I paid my dues, and we carried on. But I was kind of interested to see how she would react, because I know it wasn't a bear. It couldn't have been a bear. There's no way it could have been a bear. Absolutely not. That was the last of our encounter that we've had.
Do you think that, like, whenever you said her eyes lit up and then she said a bear, do you think she was believing what she was saying?
No.
Okay. So it was very
not at all.
It was very clear. It's like if you're trying to keep a child calm and they ask you what happened, you'll say something that you know it's not, just to try to keep them okay,
Yeah, it was, as her eye got big, she kind of like reared back or stepped back a little bit, like, oh my God, like a holy crap moment. So.
Okay. So the tree, how big was it? How thick was the trunk? Do you remember what kind of tree it was?
Yep. It was roughly the diameter of between a volleyball and a basketball, about 35 to 40 feet high. Kind of tough to say because the top of it, there 10 feet of it, as it fell right next to the tree. So that tree fell. I went over and inspected. It was about a 10 foot of the top of the tree broke off when it was getting shaken like that. So it may have been maybe a 40-foot tree. It was a pine tree, Florida pine.
How far away was the tree from you?
About 30 feet.
Could you see?
That's pretty close.
Could you see the bottom of the tree? Like, was it clear in there, or was it like brushy?
It was brushy. But we didn't hear anything before or after. My wife did hear one break after we had talked about it, after things had happened. One tree snap. Prior to that happening, probably 10 minutes before that happening. Just one snap. That was it. And she kind of dismissed it.
So if something was standing there shaking it, you couldn't see it because of the brush?
Correct. I could probably see the first, it may be 10 or 11 feet. You start to see the trees, that sort of thing, the trunks of the tree, but there's a lot of brush and pine, and palm leaves are all up, and it's all kind of just, again, Florida brush. So it's based on the Ocala National Forest too. So it's all just forest.
So the way it was shaking, a lot of times you can get a pretty good sense. Like if I grab something and shake it and you can't see me, but you can see it shaking, a lot of times you can tell, okay, someone's grabbing that from the top and shaking it, or someone's grabbing it from the bottom and shaking it. What do you think? Do you think something was up in the tree waving it back and forth, or do you think this was something that had to have been much lower on the trunk or possibly on the ground shaking it?
I would say it'd be lower on the trunk, as if I took like a 6-foot sapling and shook it, I'd have to be lower to where the top of the tree, the top half of the tree before it broke, that we could see was just like wiggling, shaking. It was crazy how quickly it was shaking back and forth. That's what we just sat there in awe going, oh my God, what the hell is that? As this tree was just shaking, also whoosh, snapped, and then that top came crashing down. That was it.
So was it whipping back and forth? Like, all right, so let's say you grab a 6-foot sapling and you take your arm and you push out as far as your arm can extend and back to you as close as you can, like back and forth like that? Or was it more like you grab the trunk and you move it about 6 inches both ways and you just try to do it as fast as you can, like you're shaking something?
Like you're shaking something, like you grabbed it and just try to shake it off.
That's crazy. You know, Robert Dotson has videos. He has multiple ones, but he has one video where he's walking out and he's getting these things eye shine right on the side of the cleared pathway in the trees, and then the trees shake. And I always thought when people talk about that, like the trees are whipping back and forth, but it wasn't like that. It was like a quick jerking, shaking motion in the tree limbs and the brush.
Yeah. Exactly. It's almost like it vibrated in a weird way. Like it vibrated from the bottom up, and it was shaking so hard that the top eventually broke off. That's what blew me away. It was like, oh my gosh, that's just crazy.
Okay, so after that, you walk into the woods to pee on the other side of your little campsite there. You walk in the woods.
Correct.
First of all, are there gators in this area? Like, are there gators close by, water close by?
We are roughly about 300 or 400 yards from the reservoir where there's a boat ramp and all that. We're probably one of the furthest campsites away from the water in our little roadway, because all the RV sites are closer to the reservoir, and they have primitive camping, a little bit further in the forest. So I would say from a gator point of view, that would be quite a distance for a gator to travel. The amount of dealings I've had with gators in Florida, they don't travel too far from the water.
Yeah, so it's unlikely that it's a gator. Okay, so you're peeing. How far in front of you was the sound, and what was the area it was in?
And I can tell you, actually, with the gator, I've heard gators bellow and months, and it wasn't that. This sound that I heard was it was behind like a palm tree area, a small short scrub palm. It was probably about 6.5, 7 foot away from me when I heard that. It was a little bit off to my left of center.
Okay, did the sound like it was coming from a bush, or, I mean, what did it sound like the sound was coming from? What did the area look like?
It just looked like Florida shrub and palm and just part of a forest, but it came from lower, like it felt like it came from like 3 or 4 feet behind this bush of palms.
And about how high off the ground did it sound like it was coming from? I mean, was it something low that was on the ground, like laying on the ground, or did it sound a little bit higher up?
It sounded a little higher up, like it was like squatting or sitting behind a bush of sorts.
So
it didn't seem like it was like laying on the ground.
3 or 4 feet? About how high up do you think it was?
I don't know. When I looked in that direction, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. Other than the sound, I didn't hear any movement, no palm fronds moving around. It was just heard that sound, and that was it. There's nothing walking away. And that was, like I said, about 6.5, 7 feet from me, probably about 3 or 4 feet off the ground as far as where the audible was. It was covered with a palm that was probably about 5.5, 6 feet tall. Okay,
that's pretty intense, being 6 or 7 feet away from something that's making that noise,
Yeah.
What'd you do? I mean, did you go back and tell your wife, or what'd you do next?
Yeah, I did. I went back and said, I just heard a weird guttural grunt, so to speak. And that's when I was going to go look for something in the woods, and she's like, no, you're staying right here. So I think at that point she felt that we had a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch in the area.
Did she hear the noise?
No.
Okay. That's campsites, was there anyone else camping at that time, or were you guys like the only ones there?
We were, there was a camper with an RV like across the road in the center of the road went in a kind of like a circle. We had campsites all the way along the north part of the Ocala National Forest. Then inside that loop or that circle was like four or five other campsites, and there's one other camper in there. And then there was another camper 4 or 5 sites up from us, but closer to the ranger station. So we're the only ones right in that area.
Have you ever heard a bobcat growl or make that grrr? Have you ever heard that, and do you think that's what it was?
Yeah, I have. And we have bobcats where I live in this area. And I've come across them a few times. But the weirdest thing was, even the sound wouldn't have alarmed me as much as the feeling I got as it came through, it went through my body. That was a weird thing. And it wasn't very loud, but you could just feel it. And it like kind of resonated in my chest, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You kind of feel it work your way up the body and just sit there and kind of shake you, I guess. Okay.
And so you and your wife's, I'm guessing you've told your wife all this, the stuff she wasn't there. What is your guys' thought on what's going on in your area and then what happened there?
Well, in the area, it's kind of tough. I'm not sure how much if we're going to have any more activity in the area since the hurricanes have come through. It's tough to say. I'm not sure if they hang around through the hurricanes, they mosey on somewhere else. As far as we kind of feel that we did have a Sasquatch encounter at what we saw it at the park, Ocala National Forest. I mean, I don't know when I came across my second encounter. I don't know what that was with the dog, that dog or whatever it was. But I kind of answer your question.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I've really enjoyed having you on. You've had some amazing encounters. I think that's the first time I've ever heard of a Bigfoot chasing people on skates. It's rare to hear them chasing people anyways, but chasing people on skates, that's pretty terrifying. But Matt, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the show tonight. Don't forget to join the Crypto PTSD family and hit that subscribe button. I'll send you a notification every Monday when we upload our new show, and then again at the end of the week when we upload the full shows. And if you've had an encounter and you'd like to be a guest on the show, send me an email. My email address is cryptoptsd@gmail.com, and don't forget to put encounter in the subject line. If you're listening to us on iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. It really helps out the show. I'd like to thank everybody for listening tonight, and we'll see you next week.